Hold on. Good evening, and welcome to Couch Conversations with the Doctors, where health is wealth. What night is it tonight? It's Monday night, and it's time for Couch Conversations. And we're going to go around the panel as always, and I'm going to have my good friend and co-host. He's going to start these introductions for us, and that's going to be Pete. And Pete's going to grab everyone else and go around. So, Dr. Pete, go right ahead.
Are things frozen for you all, or is it just me?
Maybe you. I think we're good.
Yeah, we're good, Maya. Can you hear us, Maya?
In and out. It's in and out. I'm a mute.
All right. So this is it's Couch Conversation with the Doctors. It's a pleasure for us to be here. I can start off. I'm Dr. Pete Thomas, internal medicine physician and medical director at Howard Brown Health. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. James Miller.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. James Miller. I am a retired internist. Practice about 40 years, west side, south side, western suburbs. Retired, but still in the interested in healing the community. So I'm here to participate in the conversation. Hopefully, give some information that's going to be useful and helpful to making our community healthier.
And now, my brother, the rheumatology extraordinaire, Dr. Douglas Graham.
Thank you, Dr. Pete. As Dr. Pete mentioned, I'm a retired rheumatologist. I worked in the western suburbs for 30 years. And after that, I joined the congressman's office in Washington, D.C. for 2 years. Pretty amazing experience. I'm here to answer your questions as best I can, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you.
And my fraternity brother, who also has all the art collection that I'm trying to get a couple of those pieces in my house, but he won't let me get another one. The one and only Mr. Joseph Harrington.
Thank you, Pete. My name is Joe Harrington. I retired in 2017. Most of my career has been in healthcare and public health, mostly public health, but I've also worked in education and mental health. I retired in 2017 from the Illinois Department of Public Health, where I was the regional health officer for Cook County and an administrative law judge, and a good friend and fraternity brother of Dr. Pete.
And then now my line brother, the one and only, the metabolic doc guru, who can help the diabetics get those A1C downs and honestly get you off of medicine. I refer my own personal patients to Dr. Tony Hampton. Dr. Hampton.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate those referrals. I'm always, humbled by that. And I'm also shocked and amazed that it's not the standard that we, teach our clinicians how to get people off patients off medicine. So I hope that becomes the standard moving forward. I am a family and obesity doctor, a little extra training in nutrition and functional medicine. Love helping people and really appreciate everybody that takes a moment to pause and focus on your health, because without that, not much else matters. So thank you, my brother, for the opportunity.
And then I know Maya was here, Dr. Maya Green, so we'll introduce her when she gets back. But we have, the Vanguard, again, a good alpha man, the one and only Congressman Danny Davis. Congressman Davis.
Well, thank you very much, and let me make sure I'm unmuted and all that.
Yeah, you're unmuted. You sound beautiful, so let's keep rolling.
All right, so I'm all right. So that means in our dear A fraternal spirits bond, all the fellowship. And that was what the first church I attended yesterday, their opening song was "What a Fellowship, What a Joy Divine, Leaning on the Everlasting Arm." And I actually visited 4 churches yesterday and had a wonderful, wonderful time all day long. And one sermon was kind of a dissection of the prophet Jeremiah. And I had never heard such a profound analysis of this gentleman whose daddy was a priest, whose granddaddy was a priest, and he was expected to become a priest. But the good Lord decided that he would become a prophet. And he got disappointed at different times and wondered if there was any reason to keep doing what he was doing. He said if people wasn't believing him, they wasn't listening to him, they wasn't following what he was suggesting that they do. And so in this change phenomena, I think there are individuals who, get a little disappointed when they keep doing what they know how to do. And yet the changes don't seem to come. And sometimes they give up, sometimes they give out, sometimes they stop believing. And there are people who wonder if we will just keep going around in circles in terms of seeking to equalize things, to get rid of health disparities. Will Black folks and other minority groups ever reach a level of equity in our society, ever reach equal opportunity? And they sometimes ask if it's worth continuing to try. I mean, the songwriter said, who is willing to try to save a world that is destined to die? I guess if I had a question, I'd be asking, is there hope that we're going to get to these places that we're talking about? Can we overcome the inequities in healthcare? I think I mentioned the other week that somebody had done a study and concluded that over 1 million African Americans had died during the last 2 decades, unnecessarily died. Some of it due to an absence of resources, some of it due to a lack of access, but then some of it due to the unwillingness of individuals to put as much into the effort as we could ourselves to change our health status and change what is happening. So I hope that some points during the evening that some of you will address that kind of question. And let me thank you for being. And also let me tell you that the President of the United States is going to be here on Wednesday morning and around 10 o'clock or so. And if there's anybody who'd like to be where he's going to be, if you are interested, you could just give us a call and, we'll make sure that you have the access to be there. They've asked me if I knew 10 or 12, 15 people or so who might want to be where the president is going to be. And we'd certainly like to make sure that anybody who wanted to be where the president was going to be would have the opportunity to be there. So I think that's my kind of introduction, other than to say that I've really had a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I think I did about 10 events on Saturday and Sunday, and they were invigorating. And I really enjoyed all of them, including an honorary kind of acknowledgement from an African king who said thank you to myself and some other people like Dr. Carol Adams and a few others for being engaged with African immigrants or being engaged with what's happening to our motherland and how we can be more proactive as we go forward, recognizing that all of us are here and we may have come over on different ships, but we're pretty much in the same boat. And so whether we came early and were brought here, or whether we came later of our own volition, we're all still here. And whatever happens to one happens to the other. And so we've got to just get together as much as possible. So thank you very much. Thank you. That does it for me.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman. You know, your words are always so encouraging, and you know, you make us feel like we need to do more. I mean, 10 events over 2 days. that's pretty awesome.
And I had dinner in between. As a matter of fact, I apologized to one group because I was late. And I told them the only reason I'm late is because I'm coming from another church and it was the pastor's anniversary. And I thought it would be impolite not to eat dinner before I left.
That's awesome. Thank you
Well,
so much.
right before Pete takes it away, just want to say hey to Miss K. Marie. She's here and she's inviting Kimberly Michelle to come head on and join. So Miss Welch was here. She says good evening to everyone. Yolanda Williams says good evening all. Tony is actually saying hey to everybody, asking them, telling them thank you for being here and that he values them. So thank you, Dr. Hampton, because as always, we value all of our constituents who drop by and listen and learn from our great esteemed panel that's here. Mary Ballinger is here and she says good evening to everyone. Tina Hammond is inviting people just as
Nikki froze on us.
And I know that Dr. P will actually grab the questions that are here. Linda Johnson is here and she says hey to everyone. Jackie Robinson Ivy, Congressman, says put her name on that list to see Biden, and so does Tina Hammond. So we want to make sure that we've got both of them down on the list. That's Jackie Robinson Ivy and Tina Hammond, who wants to be there. So Pete, Maya is here. Dr. Mason is trying to get his way in here, but take it away, Pete.
All right, Dr. Maya Green.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. You want to introduce yourself? Everybody know you anyway, but still.
My name is Dr. Maya Green, community physician, lover of my community. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Congressman, for having this. I'm looking forward. It's a high allergy pollen count today. So I'm one of those people, you can hear it in my voice, but I'm here ready to learn and ready to share.
Awesome. So you're right, Nikki. We do have a few questions on the side. We have a question from Croquet Maria. How do I find a good doctor that's either African American or has experience with diverse cultures in the northwest suburb area of Illinois? Any suggestions for Maria?
Sure. There's an organization called the Cook County Physicians Association. You can find us at cookcountychicago.org. Also, there's a website that actually lists doctors by location and specialty. It's called blackdoctor.org. You can head right on over there, look for whatever you need for all your healthcare look for what you need to address your health care at this time. blackdoctor.org or Cook County Physicians Association.
Right. And just for clarity, the Cook County Physicians Association does not have an official association with Cook County necessarily. That is the Black local version of the National Medical Association, which is the African American national organization. So just wanted to clarify.
And it was established by Dr. Daniel Hale Williams.
Yeah.
We need to know our history.
Absolutely.
Wait, it was established by, I believe, Dr. George Cleveland Hall.
Oh, Dr. Hall. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Dr. Hall, who was a colleague of Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, who founded Provident. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, and was the first person. Y'all rely on Cupid. I'm going with Dr. Daniel Hale Williams to mend hearts. Let's go. Every Valentine's Day, think about Dr.
There was all buddies, right?
Yeah, but it's important to know our history nonetheless. Thanks for correcting me.
And by the way, y'all know Maya used to be a teacher too, by the way. So
and we all are. Doctor means teacher, actually.
Yes.
It's Latin for teacher. Yep.
Awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about men's health this month, and also mental health. As you know, these subjects are often taboo. Men typically don't pay a lot of attention to our health until it's too late. Just a little statistics so we can just kind of get a firm understanding of what's going on. So men are 1.5 times more likely to die from heart disease, cancer, and respiratory diseases. Men are 3 to 7 times more likely to commit suicide than women. Men account for 55% of the workforce, but 92% of the workplace deaths. Men live on an average of 5 to 7 years less than women. And that can vary depending on the ethnicity or the region that you live in. And then, of course, men and boys have a higher death rate in 9 out of 10 of the leading causes of death. So, with that being said, I'm just curious to know from our panel what the average man. There's a lot of people in the audience who have fathers and uncles and sons and nephews. What should we be doing to curtail some of the statistics that we just heard right now? Not all at once.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Well, we're men. We should be able to say something, right? I'll start by saying that men have to look at themselves as human organisms, and human organisms have very basic needs. We all know about, food, water, shelter, but we need like a community. When you look at any civilization that has longevity, they have community. So the first part is we need to make sure men have a place where they can be honest and talk about things that they struggle with. I've convinced a lot of men even to just talk to a therapist. And I think it's important what was suggested earlier, which is some men just have to have a person who looks like them. So hopefully we'll get more people who are of color to go into these fields where we deal with the mind. But we also have to be open to people who don't look like us. Whenever I talk to a behavioral health professional personally, I've actually done it with both races. And I'll be honest, my best experience was a 65-year-old white male who gave me the best experience. And my highly educated brother, who just happened to be a brother, alpha brother, my experience wasn't as good. How ironic is that? So be open to sharing a side of you with somebody, because guess what? Your cousin, your mama, your aunt, all those folk are not experts in this. They love you and they will try to bless you with whatever they can share. But why not talk to a professional who can help us? And I even go back to how we started, where we said, Brother Joe and Brother Pete and the congressman, we're all in the same fraternity, but it was really the support I got from the fraternity back at Xavier in college that gave me the courage to run for a junior class president, gave me the support I needed when I was struggling in school and had to get pushed a little harder. So it's really being in a community. And I think I would start with that, because I just think that when people struggle, somebody has to help them peel that onion. And part of what's necessary is to become, humble and vulnerable and authentic, and just say, what are you feeling? And then maybe somebody who's hearing your voice will be able to help you when you're struggling. So I would start with that and let my colleagues add some additional thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in and pick up on parts of the question that Pete asked. And there was a publication that's available in 2000 that looked at the actual causes of death, because we always talk about the leading cause of death. And there have been some studies that actually looked at what really drives those causes of death and what is the actual cause of death. So in 2000, the leading actual cause of death was from tobacco, accounted for 18.1% of total U.S. deaths. After that, it was poor diet and physical activity, accounted for 15.2% of all deaths. And then the third was alcohol consumption, which accounted for 3.5% of all deaths. So lifestyle plays a major role, and the choices you make play a major role in what sometimes we call in public health premature death. There are people that die before they would have died if they hadn't done something different. Can't hear you, Dr. Mason.
You're muted. He got something good to say, I can tell.
He's muted now. He wasn't, but now it's
still muted.
There's something going on with your audio.
Something going on with your audio, Terry.
But while he's
I'll jump. I'll just go ahead.
So Dr. Miller, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll jump in and say a couple of things. I think that one of the things that we have to look at, that I look at, is living, and I think oftentimes, what I've found over the years of practicing is that it seems like people are waiting for bad things to happen, for death to come, for sickness and illness to come, and therefore they don't concentrate on living. And living can help to bring quality to your life if you really focus a little bit on that, and focus on those things that matters to you being happy, matters to you being healthy, matters to you being in a community that supports you and that you can support. And so I think that and as men, oftentimes, we focus on things that maybe isn't that important, and being in control of certain things that we really can't be in control of anyway, as opposed to looking to, as I heard somebody say, being vulnerable, because we are. Recognizing that, and recognizing that that is not a weakness, it's just a reality. And we have to live with that, and we have to adjust to those things. And we can overcome it if we don't perceive it as being something that is bad. But I think the big thing that that I've always dealt with as a physician is that men tend to think that I don't want to consider myself vulnerable in any way. Therefore, I don't want to know that I have a problem, and therefore I won't know. But the fact is that the truth is what it is. And if you suffer from problems or illnesses, they are there whether you know it or not, and they are going to do what they do to you whether you know it or not. However, knowing it does give you an opportunity to have an intervention and to improve some things. So I think that we like to say, let's intervene. Let's look at living and making life as full as we possibly can. And I think that if we can focus more on that as opposed to on what things are going to kill me, what things are going to make me sick.
Yeah, I want to pick up on what Dr. Miller said, because we also have to acknowledge that there are real gender roles that the society attributes to men and women. And I can remember from the time I was a little boy to the time I became a man, I was always told to be a man up,
Mm,
act like a man. So there are things that we're told as men that make us feel maybe that there's certain things we shouldn't feel pain. And if you play sports, you play through the pain. You don't
mhm,
pay attention
mhm.
to the pain, and over time you just become, you feel like, well, if I feel okay, then I must be okay. Actually, a good friend and colleague, Dr. Mason's of mine, Dr. Paul Crawford, he referred to that as "I feel good" syndrome. Just because you feel good doesn't mean you're healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. We have a few questions on the side. One is Dr. Hampton. I follow a keto diet coupled with intermittent fasting, and I've been blessed to lose over 100 pounds. Yet my LDL and my apoprotein B are high. I don't want to take a statin. Any suggestions?
I did throw in something in the chat, and I want to comment on what I threw in there. The American Heart Association in March of, I think, this year, maybe last year. I'm not sure yet, but they did a recommendation that, and it was actually in diabetics. So if you're a diabetic and you have a concern about statins, the best test you can use to determine if you should be taking a statin is a heart scan, coronary artery calcium score test, which measures the plaques in your artery. They are hypothesizing, and I agree with them, that if you're, like 70 years old and you do not have plaques in your arteries, then there is no need for even a diabetic to take a statin. Now, the problem with this, and when they did the research, they found that 40-some% of diabetics who are on statins didn't need to be on a statin based on that. So number one, the problem with that approach is that that's not standard of care yet. When these organizations and or science comes up with a recommendation, then you have to wait until the organizations and like the health system and the insurers catch up. And if you really think about it, most regular conventionally trained docs are not even ordering a calcium score test. So that's the disconnect. So even if you do that and you find that your score is 0 and you meet this criteria, you may find that your clinician will still push for you to be on the statin. If you're diabetic in particular, because the risk for a heart attack for a diabetic is equal to that of a person that's already had a heart attack. So I just want to caution you, if you do that, and I do this all the time for my patients, get a coronary artery calcium score, see what the results are. And if it's a 0, you do have some evidence to support that decision. A fasting insulin level is 6 times more diagnostic of heart disease than a cholesterol or an LDL test. 6.8 times more. Even your blood pressure is 1.9 times more predictive of a future heart attack. So what you want to do is put together a scenario where you're able to say, man, I got a few things not looking good. I got a few things looking good. The most definitive test is the heart scan. And that's kind of how I would do it. They do have the particle test for LDL. And if you do a particle test, even if your LDL is high and your small particles are not high, because that's the one that increases risk for heart attack, and your large particles are okay or high, then that's another piece of information you can give to your clinician. But just be prepared, since it's not standard of care, you are likely to get a little pushback. And all you're asking your doctor to do is to collaborate with you and work with you, and maybe use some of the resources. If you go to YouTube and you search Dr. Tony Hampton, American Heart Association, you'll see a video with myself and Dr. Mayday Fox. In that video, in the notes, you'll see a link to the American Heart Association document that shows their position statement on these issues.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Dr. Mason, are you have our audio fixed?
I don't know. Can you tell me?
Yes, yes, you own.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate everyone's tolerance with my technical issues this evening, and I want to thank you for this opportunity to be here. It was just something you were saying earlier when we talk about men, and I tell you, I learned a lot about this when I was in practice, dealing with probably one of the most sensitive subjects men had to deal with, and that's erectile dysfunction. And I can tell you, those of you in practice, I'm sure you would bear witness that it's not a topic that's easily discussed. And even though we had the advent of some of these drugs that came out during that time, it was still a difficult conversation. And it was really difficult because for many men, this particular problem struck to the core of their manhood. And what it took was to the points that you've been making, and I'll be brief, is that you need to be empathetic. You need to talk to people. And one of the things that I learned after I left practice, that one of the most important things that I did was had a space where men felt safe to talk. And a lot of our men are going through lots and lots of things. And even those that appear very successful, and probably are, and hold high positions, both in different areas, not just business, but clergy and so on and so forth, are battling a lot of different issues. And sometimes they need an ear that will hear and leave what happened in the room, but yet provide them a space to be able to verbalize it. And I'll leave any of the other docs who, and Pete, you probably can see this all the time with in primary care, but it's really, really important because our men don't really have that sacred space. And because when they're in other spaces with other men, whether it be in golfing or any kind of sporting event or what have you, there's not sometimes a total honesty that's there. And I just want to say that we want to be sensitive as we talk to men, that sometimes the problems that we have are exacerbated by the lack of opportunity for men to be able to discuss these in a way that helps them do what needs to be done to help themselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, with the work that we did with the Pello, and then the work that I did with Project Brotherhood, the Black Men's Clinic at County, you know, we found out how vulnerable men are, all because of some socialization that we've been taught, and the years of being taught that, you know, to communicate, you're soft. You know, if you complain, you're soft. And so what does that mean? So the man that feels a little twinge in his chest, and should he complain? Because if he complains, then that goes against all the things he's been taught his whole life. That you know, and I would see men who said, I said, well, tell me when this first started. And he'd be like, over a year ago. And I'm like, over a year ago, but you're just coming now? I'm glad you're here. Now let's get you to the ER, you know. Now, but I'm just saying, like, it's a real challenge to break the social norms and get men to communicate about subjects other than baseball, football, basketball, right? I know one of the things we would do at Project Brotherhood, we would use those traditional mediums to be able to get men to talk. So we might have a PlayStation on, but who's playing PlayStation with you happens to be a health advocate or a outreach worker. And so that outreach worker is able to have some conversations and weave in some, hey, you know, do you exercise? How do you eat? I see a lot of questions over here about the low carb diet, but I'm going to ask Dr. Hampton something. So when men go see the doctor, and you have a provider that wants to put you on a statin. So I'm always like, when I get my friends of mine who ask me, this person trying to put me on a statin. Now I'm saying, now listen, this person cares enough about you, understands the risk that you're under. And so I don't want to make it like that person is the enemy, right? That person is really looking at your trajectory if he or she does not intervene. And so what I like for most of my patients to adhere to the low carb diet, I want them to do that. But if I have a sense that I have an opportunity to get in between my patient and a heart attack, I'm going to do it, And even if it means you don't want to take this pill, I don't want you to be on this pill either. But if I can keep your daughter from being without a father, or keeping your wife from being a widow, I'm going to do that for you, because that's what good physicians should do. Now, the reality is most of our people come from communities that's not well supported. And so we live in food deserts. We live in environments that doesn't have the best access. We have the cost of living is higher. People are working regular jobs and driving Uber. So when are they supposed to do all the really nice things that people with lots of resources are have the capabilities of doing? So I just want to broaden that discussion to say sometimes they're not the bad guy. The bad guy is the guy that lets you walk in and out of the office and know you have a LDL of 250 and doesn't do anything about it, or let you walk in and out of the office, your blood pressure is 160 over 110, doesn't do anything about it. Keep taking your medicine. Well, that ain't the answer. Something is wrong. If he's taking that medicine and his blood pressure is still that high. So anyway, I think we need to so we need to unpack that.
Yeah.
To have our men to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know what you guys.
Well, I just want to just add that, the questions that are coming that are focused on low carb and statins are coming from my YouTube channel, because I've kind of connected my channel to this broadcast. Okay. And so they have a framing that's different because they've been educated away from conventional education, which is what we've all been taught in medical school. So the key is this. When I live in a conventional health system. I tend to be a non-conventional doc. So how do you do both? Well, for me, as I've learned, rather it's the master's in nutrition or my own personal research, what I've learned is that when it comes to statins, it's going to come down risk benefit. Now, there are clearly people who clearly have evidence of cardiovascular disease, including those people with those high calcium scores. Let's say your calcium score is over 400, is 1,000, or those people you could easily argue would be beneficial to those people because this is what it says in the literature. If I have 110 people who take a statin, I'm only going to benefit one person. So the number needed to treat is 110 to benefit one person. The question is, if you then take that 109 people who took a statin, does it harm those people? And the answer to that question is it can, from the perspective of a 68% increased risk of diabetes, from taking a medicine that reduces your risk for heart disease. It can, from the perspective of cognitive impairment. So let's just say me and my family. My wife's dad has dementia. Her risk for dementia is higher because her dad has dementia. So you have to then weigh, is the benefit 1 out of 110 taking a statin that could cause some cognitive decline? Is the benefit greater in not having a heart attack versus not taking the statin and taking my chances with lifestyle? The problem is, if you don't do a lifestyle change, then I would argue maybe it does make sense to take the statin. But in the community that I live in, I'm trying to convince people that if you make these dietary changes, not only do you not have to worry about the medicine and the side effects, but you're going to probably fix a lot of the metabolic problems that you worry about in the first place. So that's kind of how my angle is. Get the data that supports a decision like that, but also considered bridge therapy. So if I'm talking to a diabetic whose A1C is 9, and I get their A1C down to 5.2 after they've done these changes, they've removed the risk, the inflammation from diabetes, the high sugars. So now their risk for all the things we worry about, you've eliminated. Now they have to maintain that, but then they have a path to not have to be on what I call bridge therapy, which is temporary insurance. The problem is so many people never hear this message. So many people never make lifestyle changes. And you could argue for people who don't do that, they need to have cover from somewhere. And for those people, maybe the benefit of taking that medicine is not, is greater than the negative effects of the increased risk for diabetes and increased risk for cognitive decline. So that's how I deal with it. And I know it's very confusing because a lot of the clinicians in the conventional practice are not only expecting you to take the medicines without having these nuanced conversations. I would argue they probably don't even know some of the stuff I'm talking about. And I would also argue that they will get penalized if they don't put you on the medicine. So I'm constantly making less money when I'm not putting people on medicines that the powers that be are saying you need to be. And guess what? That American Heart Association recommendation to do a heart scan and get off a statin if you're a diabetic, that type of stuff is not known. And even if it is known, it's still not considered standard of care yet. Therefore, the doctors who are charged to take care of you, who actually care about you, they're charged to follow standard of care. So whenever you deviate from standard, most of the people in the low carb community are not in a large health system. They're in private practice, or they're just, educating you on YouTube. So they don't have the same, I would say, need to be careful that I have. So I'm not afraid to speak the truth, but I'm also able to navigate by sharing information from a research perspective that supports these decisions.
That's awesome. Any other comments?
I won't make a comment necessarily. We all know that I have a differing opinion about. I think that I love low carb diet because that's what I consider myself on, is a low carb eating plan, because you don't get very much carbs, processed carbs, and processed carbs are the problems. But when you're eating plants, that's about as low carb as you can get. And I think that people need to think about that. So I agree that minimizing your low processed carbs is a great thing. The one thing that I would add is that I would encourage us all, and I know our times are short with the patients, but one of the things, and I learned this after I left my practice, when I left practice, what I discovered wasn't so much that it was not having that urologic service by a person that looks like them, but was more important that they look forward, because I was always running at least an hour and a half behind, but they look forward to having a safe space to talk. And I would not want you guys, any of you that's still in practice, not to underestimate the power of creating a safe space to talk. What do I mean? A space where the patients know that no matter what other people you see, none of what is going to be an issue with them, especially high profile patients, and or even those that are not. So I just want to encourage us to think about, our men don't have that space. And sometimes the only space they have is a space behind the door of your office.
Yeah, I want to say something and maybe defend my colleagues, particularly those that are physicians, particularly those that are still practicing medicine, and particularly those that are part of large systems. That one of the things and one of the challenges about being a physician in today's, in this country and in healthcare in general, is they're looking at your productivity and looking at the number of patients you see, how much time you spend with patients. I mean, there are a lot of people that are in management in these large health systems that are looking at physicians in terms of productivity. So there's a lot of pressure on physicians too, to actually see a certain number of patients within a certain amount of time, which sometimes makes them possibly rush when they're seeing you. It's not that they don't want to spend more time with you. They have to do what they need to do in terms of what their work requires. And so that can put some pressure on the physician as well. But since you're there and you are the patient, you need to be bold enough to ask a question. And if you don't understand, to let a physician know that you don't understand. A lot of times people will go to the doctor and they'll listen and they will nod their heads as if they understand what's being said. But a lot of times they don't, and they leave and then they go talk to family members or will talk to somebody else so that they can get a better understanding of what the doctor talked about. You have rights as a patient. You deserve better treatment. And you are the person that needs to speak up on your own behalf to make sure you get the care you need and that you're listened to.
Outstanding. Well, Bonnie, Sister Bonnie says, very true, Dr. Mason. And she wanted to congratulate you on some of the words that you shared. And Mr. Freeman says, speak truth to power. So there are some great comments and everything coming in, but I have a anonymous chat question that says, is it true, and this is for any doctors on the panel, is it true that fried chicken and potato chips are horrible on a man's prostate? Everybody don't jump at that at the same time.
I'm not going to get into this specific organ about these specific organs that these things do. I think that we just need to look at what we know the evidence to be. And it's not just those two things. It's what you're eating most of the time, most of the days. And I would say that, you've heard me a lot talk about things. You've heard Dr. Hampton talk about a few things, and there's some differences. But the thing is that we all know that we're eating way too much of the fried chicken. And I used to love fried chicken. I was one of these people that had it all the time. But, like I said, it created a problem. And so you need to make certain that you're keeping touch with your physician and looking at the numbers so that, in God we trust, all others must have data. So you need to make certain that you're getting the right information from your doctor. It may not just be your fried chicken that's a problem. Maybe it's a lot of some of the sodas that you're drinking. Maybe there's other things that you need to think about because they have taken our thirst for water and created a soft drink industry. So there's a lot of things there's a lot, and I won't go any further right now.
Yeah, I'll just comment that processed foods are far more damaging to our bodies. And so to Dr. Hampton's point, even if you're on a statin, if you're not adhering to a lifestyle change, it's not going to work out for you. And, and I'm a big advocate that you have to be consistent. So your body will listen to, the more consistent you are, the more your body will tend to listen to you. So if you're adhering to a low carb, low fat diet, and you are exercising, your body will listen to you. Keeping your insulin levels low, your body will listen to you. But if you're giving your body confusing messages where, you ran a half marathon, but then you go smash a bag of Doritos, then, Doritos, they say a bag of Doritos that was made in 2021 tastes just like a bag of Doritos that just walked out the factory. Well, that's a problem, right? Because something 2 years old shouldn't taste the same as something. So that tells you right there that that's not real food and that's doing more damage to us. But recognizing this, as a public health person, what I also recognize, there's something called social determinants of health. So many times that's the symptom. The idea that we're eating these, highly processed foods, we're doing that because we're surrounded by a bunch of stuff called racism, sexism, it's called poverty, and all those things make us want to feel good, right? We want a sugar rush. We want those stress hormones, those catecholamines high, right? To get us out of the sort of the mental dungeon that we're in. And so we want to be aware of our actions has roots. And so we have to look and make sure that we're not eating to satisfy something, right? maybe past trauma, maybe current trauma, right? So I'm not blaming. I don't blame my patients for some things that they do, but I do have to bring to light in that short time period, like you said, Dr. Mason, that short time period I got with you, I'm really trying to connect with you, right? And I understand the powers that be want me to see a certain amount of patients and I have to run over, but I'm still trying to figure out where's the connection, where's the dots. And so, but I appreciate when the patients can tie the dots with me.
I'll just add real quickly. For me, the frying chicken question has a lot to do with the flour. If you take a breast and you, instead of air frying it as an example, and we can eliminate the oil altogether, the breast is going to have zero carbs when you don't put flour on it. It'll have 16 carbs when you put flour on it. Divided by 4 is 4 teaspoons of sugar. And that's the problem, because that 4 teaspoons of sugar is going to then lead to an insulin spike. And you could argue that most of the chronic medical conditions that we deal with in America and throughout the world are due to high insulin levels, increasing your risk for a heart attack, increasing your risk for stroke and dementia and cancer and blood pressure and diabetes. So I would be more concerned with the flour. I would also be concerned about seed oils. If you fried in the corns and the canolas, that's more inflammatory because they were seeds that were turned into oil versus the coconut and avocado oils that were not, they were just cold pressed. So I think what you use matters if you're not using the air fryer. And there's levels to this, but anything that raises insulin is going to potentially raise your risk for heart disease. Therefore, should be avoided. So if you are a person who consumes animals, there's levels to this, and there's ways to mitigate your risk by thinking about what am I using. The air fryer is a gift from above. I would use that a lot because it tends to give that crispy exterior that most of us like, while avoiding some of the oils that we shouldn't use and the flours that we shouldn't use.
That's awesome.
So Tina Hammond says you're coming down my road. Take the wheel, Jesus. All right, Tina, we are driving down your road. Yes, we are. We are headed down that road. Well, I'm going to say something to you guys that you guys hate to hear. And that is, it's our time. But right before we talk about our time and we go around the table, I just want to make a few announcements really, really quickly. So I want you to pull your calendars out and I want you to make some notes of some great things that we have coming up and going on. So first of all, we want you guys to join us tomorrow. Join us tomorrow. Tony, make sure you write this down really well. Join us tomorrow at the Wyndham Hotel, formerly known as the South Loop Hotel. Join us there between the hours of 1 and 5. And join Congressman Davis as we are restoring mental health to the Illinois 7th Congressional District. It's a great town hall meeting Tuesday, June 27th from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. We have a great panel of physicians and clinicians who will be there with us having a conversation on how we can restore mental health and behavioral health in our city and lower some crime rates and find some great solutions to work together. So make sure that you join us at that time. And that's tomorrow, June 27th at the Wyndham Hotel. And the Wyndham Hotel is located at 11 West 26th Street. Once again, that's 11 West 26th Street here in Chicago. On July 8th, that's July 8th, starting at 8 a.m. in the morning, we want you guys to join us. We want everyone to come out and join us at the United Center. So come and meet us at the United Center in the parking lot there. Join Congressman Davis, Dr. James Miller, Urban Transformation Network, and our Honorable Clerk Dorothy Brown for the citywide Climate Smart Agricultural Equity Expo Extravaganza. So we have some great invited guests who will be there with us on that day that we have reached out to and invited, but we want you to join us. We're going to join for a pre-expo activity as a walk and bike-a-thon. So that's going to start at 8 a.m. So we want you to get out and come out and meet us at that time. Then we're going to have some pavilion activities that's going to start at 10. We're going to have some great speakers. So we're going to have a youth fair, a health fair pavilion, a youth pavilion, a senior pavilion, an urban gardening pavilion, our governmental pavilion. We're going to have a spiritual and healing pavilion and our health and disabled pavilion. So we want to just remind you guys to meet us. That's in the United Center parking lot. That's on July 8th, starting at 8 a.m. and we will be there until 5 p.m. Remember, all of these items are free. You are free to join. Just come out and join us at that time. So now we've talked about June 27th. We talked about July 8th. Now we want to talk about July 15th. On July 15th, we would like you to join Congressman Danny K. Davis, along with President Sanders of Malcolm X College, Dr. James Miller, the NBA Association, that's the National Basketball Association, along with a number of retired players from Mark Aguirre to Sonny Parker to the Iceman, to great players who will be there and who will be along with us. We will have a mentoring management expo along with some great agencies that are going to be there, such as ACE and the Bright Leadership Institute, as we mentor our youth. And our youth are being mentored by our current and retired NBA players. These sessions will last for actually 90 days throughout this time. And we will have these educational basketball tournaments and games between Malcolm X and Phillips High School with our youth and these retired NBA players and these current players. So we want you guys to come out and join us. If you have youth who you would like to be a part of this free summer event, please reach out to our office and just ask for me, Nikki Harvey. When you call our office, we will make sure that we can get your youth as a part of this great event. And as always, don't forget the Congressman's 43rd Back to School Picnic Parade and World Health Day. That is August 19th. August 19th. Join us August 19th in the Columbus Park at 5700 West on Jackson for the Back to School Picnic Parade and World Health Day. So I know you guys have calendars full of stuff. Wanted to remind you to join us. Tina Hammond says Doritos are the devil. And then I also got a little notice from someone who reminded me of a meeting that we were at on Thursday. So we were at a meeting on Thursday at one of our healthcare places that shall stay nameless. And during the meeting, it was a lunch meeting, so they had these box lunches. And since I'm doing something a little different right now, I guess my appetite is different, so I don't eat too much. However, I looked in the box to see what was there. And lo and behold, Dr. Pete, what did I see? There was a Twinkie in the box. The only cake that can live for 10 years and still tastes the same. So I had to ask the people, I was like, this is a hospital. Y'all got Twinkies in the box. So, I mean, guys, we just got to we got to think about what we're doing and think about what we're putting into our bodies. But when you talk about something that's unhealthy, and remember, there was a day when I loved a good Twinkie until I found out that a Twinkie lived for 10 years, or more. A Twinkie, huh? Yeah, okay. As we go around the board, I'm going to talk to Joe Harrington. Joe, the man with the art and the plan. What's your until next Monday?
Well, I know we were talking about, and we started talking about mental health in men, but I want to say ultimately we're all human beings and we need some love and kindness. And so I've said this before, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. And the last thing that I'm going to say, and this is said long before me, and Dr. Mason can relate to it, and we did talk a lot about food and diet. We want people to not eat to live, eat to live, not live to eat.
All
eat
right.
To live, not
live
to eat.
Not live to eat. You know, the congressman often says that. So thank you so much, Joe Harrington. Dr. Douglas Graham, you're until next Monday.
Well, I'm still thinking about those Doritos and Twinkies. I mean, when I was a kid, that was where I lived. I'm thinking, this is the summertime. This is the best time of year in Chicago. Take advantage of it. Get outside with your family and your kids. Spend time outside with them instead of inside in front of electronic devices.
All right, outstanding. Dr. James Miller, you're until next Monday.
My until next Monday is, again, be kind to yourself as well as being kind to each other. We oftentimes beat up on ourselves about various things that ultimately cause disappointment and trauma in our individual lives. So be kind to yourself. I mean, everybody make a mistake. Everybody fails from time to time. Don't let that be such a downer for you. Be kind to yourself, and and allow yourself to make these mistakes, and then try to correct it.
All right, to the man who once Super Donuts chased him down the street. That's our very own Tony Hampton.
Yeah, well, I'm still running because we're all human, and even a guy who teaches the avoidance of such substances, he understands it's a challenge. We've all loved Doritos, and even when and even the Quest chips, which are kind of like the high protein replacement, can work for some people, but a lot of people still crave Doritos when they eat the so-called better version, if you can afford the Quest chips, because they are pricey. So I do believe that we have addictions to these foods, not because they were designed to just nourish us, but because they were designed to make us addictive. And rather it's the salt in the Doritos, they put sugar in Doritos, believe it or not. Those are the types of, and the MSGs, those are the things that make them addictive. So there's nothing wrong with you when you can't say no. There's nothing wrong with you when you don't feel full when you eat those things. There's something wrong with the food. And as Brother Pete has suggested, we have to avoid processed food, as also suggested by Dr. Mason. So I think as we kind of wrap up, I do want to share what I put in the notes. I just put a couple of folk, because a few people said, where are the doctors of color who understand metabolic health? And there's a YouTube channel called Violet, The Road to Health. She's a person of color, female, believe it or not, a psychiatrist. But what's really interesting for her is that, psychiatrists that, like Dr. Georgia Ede, who's a psychiatrist, they're not supposed to talk about nutrition. How ridiculous is that? But that's the world we live in Canada, where Violet is, and in the United States. So we have Houston, we have a problem. We also have another doctor in Canada, Dr. Quadro Caramente, who is an ICU doc. And he does speak at some of these conferences, and he's somebody you should know of. And then Dr. Cecil Ann Clark Gainhart, who's a OB-GYN, kind of a, fertility type doc, and she's also one who understands it. So I just want to throw those three names. There's a few others, but I agree we need more people who are doing what I do and what Dr. Mason do. In particular, we try to get out and talk to people about lifestyle and wellness, because ultimately that's the only way you're going to heal. So I hope those names engage you, and I would definitely check out Dr. Violet, because her Road to Health YouTube channel is very practical, easy to understand, and she's doing a great job educating people.
Outstanding, outstanding. Dr. Maya Green, Dr. 100, you're until next Monday.
Well, until next Monday, I definitely enjoyed hearing and learning during this conversation about a vital part of our community, which are men. I really love the part where kind of we talked about, yes, there are things we can definitely do for our health. Also, there's studies that show like a lot of those foods increase mucus in your body and inflammation, and they impact the inflammation and mucus and the urogenital tract, that's the prostate, penis, those type of things, and it makes it harder to have erections. So that's one side. But the other thing I love that we talked about social determinants of health, and how some of these things are not accident. The congressman asked about hope. There are pockets of hope that are springing up and blooming, right? Some of these things, environments created for us, are not accident. But if we come together and remember, a pivotal point of our community is anytime they want to destroy the community, they try to destroy the women, but they also try to destroy the men in the homes first, right? Put them in jail, all kinds of stuff. So I'm interested in having more talks about this or learning more about this. So thank you all.
Outstanding. Dr. Mason, you're until next Monday.
My until next Monday is I'm going to echo some of the things that Dr. Tony said, but one of the things I want to make sure that we're clear about, and he and I, it's lockstep on this, is that most of the stuff that comes out of cans and boxes aren't really good for us, and we need to limit those things. They may be expeditious. You might be able to get to them quickly, and many of these things are made in such a way that they create an addictive sort of situation that Dr. Tony mentioned also. So, and that's on purpose, because you have to remember that the value proposition in our healthcare system, managing disease, that's the value proposition. We don't really cure anything. We really manage, and that's important. But we need to understand that the real cures are not, and the real prevention happens in your kitchen. And you've heard us talk a lot about that. So I'll always be on that same sheet of music. And I'm going to close by saying, at this year's National Medical Association meeting, we're having a plenary session because we want to start teaching doctors about the role that food has. And there's no substitute for eating the right foods. Even the medications won't do as their job as well as we like them to, or we think they should, if we're putting the wrong stuff in our systems. So, and drinking too. Water is something that's still real important for us to drink. Not stuff that's colored or sweetened, but just good old water. So I'll stop right there.
Outstanding, Dr. Mason. I want to say hey to our group over at the Core Center who is working, but they are watching. And they actually sent some information just as well. They wanted to send a shout out to Dr. Pete and said they were glad to see him back. And they also said that they have a topic that they want us to share. They would like us to have some more additional men conversation on next week, but they would like us to focus on STIs and really educate our community about how there's so much gonorrhea and syphilis out here, which lets us know that people are not necessarily wrapping up. So we will definitely deep dive over into that just as well. Dr. P, you're until next Monday.
So I agree with all of my colleagues. I mean, you guys hit it right on the nail. And just to share with our Facebook family, like Dr. Graham said, it's the summertime. You gotta live in the moment. Let's stop trying to prepare for tomorrow that we forget it's today. It's today. It's nice outside. Go out, enjoy the weather, laugh. I'm a big advocate of laughing. And people at my clinic know I want to hear people laughing. And there's enough stuff to be sad about. If you want to just sit here and be sad, you can sit here and be sad. But when it's time to celebrate, it's time to laugh and dance. We need to do that. That's until next Monday.
I see. I'm like, does Pete have his own theme music? And as always, Congressman, take us home.
Well, let me just thank everybody for being a part of a great discussion. And I will add that men are not only not looking after our health as well, but we're not as engaged in the socialization process. That is the processes of association. I noted at one of the churches I was at on yesterday that practically all of the men who were there were either on the deacon board or in the pulpit, which means that the majority of the congregation were female, probably about 7 or 8 to 1. Men just weren't there. Many of them, of course, were not there because they've already died and they aren't in existence. I visit nursing homes from time to time. Used to go lots on Sunday afternoons when I was an alderman, and my territory wasn't as broad in terms of where I went. And I would go and sit around the nursing homes and chat with the recipients there, the inmates, not inmates, with the residents. And of course, there might be 25 or 30 women. We'd all be sitting around in the day room and just enjoying ourselves. There might be one or two men. The men had either already died or if they were there, they didn't come down. And so men, seemingly, especially African American men, are not taught as much about socialization, being a part of socialized behavior and doing things in a social way. So I think we got to pay some serious attention to that. And the other thing I'll just note is that there are a lot of things taking place, a lot of activity. We had a meeting this morning at 9 o'clock with the mayor and some of his staff. We had a meeting at 10 o'clock with the governor of the state of Illinois and people. We were all praising the high rail movement that we are indeed a part of. And of course, all these other things are coming up. And the president has invited me to make a little speech at this place where he's going to be on Wednesday. So if you want to see me and the president talk, you can come on down at the old post office building around 10 o'clock or so, and that's where we're going to be. But thanks to everybody. We've had another wonderful, wonderful discussion. And I want to thank all of those who've been listening and participating, because I've been told that if you think a little bit won't make a difference, spend a night with a mosquito and see what happens. So have a good evening. Enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll see you next week.